So I made a video the other day that the F movement, the word above, I won't say it because certain platforms will ban the video. Ridiculous. We're all adults here, but they got to watch over us. Um, I made a video the other day, and what I was pointing out is the nature of the F word, the F movement. And I said, actually, an F movement isn't by nature conservative. It's not. An F movement, generally speaking, European F movements are anti-liberal, we know that, anti-communist, we know that, and they're also anti-conservative. Most people don't know that. And I said also in the video that yes, sometimes people who are more right-leaning tend to align with the F movement, but the movement itself, for the most part, is not actually conservative. It sees itself as a revolutionary movement. It sees itself as a new form of political existence that transcends the left and the right. Okay, it's nationalist at heart, and that's what can draw some conservatives to the movement. But the movement usually is a radical overhaul of the way things have been. But the movement's also irrational. It's irrational. It's based on emotion, and it kind of houses contradictions, like all politically extreme movements. So while it's radical and wants to overhaul the system, create this new thing called the F movement, at the same time it likes certain traditions. The people from Germany in the 1930s and 40s, another word I can't say on these platforms, the movement, led by the big H, they saw themselves as sort of a new thing, the new man, very masculine. Very masculine. See, I almost said it. The F movement is very masculine. And but they also took in what you could call ancient traditions. They were obsessed with Tacitus's Germania, and this book supposedly talked about how those people from Germany in the 1930s and 40s were these great warriors. So they were obsessed with that. There was a certain part of those guys from the 1930s and 40s that were obsessed with Atlantis and seeking Atlantis. So it can be irrational. It's a sort of spiritual movement. It's based on the idea that it's sort of capitalist and socialist. Private property exists, but at any time it can be snatched up by the government if need be. It's also expansionistic very often. It wants to go beyond its borders. Lebensraum. It needs to Italy into Ethiopia. It does this because they think they are superior. So why wouldn't they expand out into the world and make the world a better place by such expansion? They believe in aesthetics. They want to change the art. They don't. If you look at like the Weimar Republic and look at the art, some of the art in the Weimar Republic, the figures of the people kind of wispy and willowy, and you might say spiritual, right? They're kind of spiritual figures. When the Germany movement led by H comes to power, it's so hard to talk this way. When it comes to power, you could see these statues are angular, muscular. Men are projected walking around with their chest out, and the women are all at home. There are very strict gender roles under the F movement. Women are at home, and they're at home to produce more boys and girls, boys who will become soldiers, who will love the state and devote themselves to the fatherland, and women who will grow up to produce more women and take care of the home. Women were in the home. And the way the father was the head of the family, the leader of the nation was the head of the family of the nation. So there's these many hierarchies and one big hierarchy. I think this is why people sometimes get confused and think Jordan Peterson is an F word or something, because it seems to them, because I guess they never did compare and contrast when they were like in elementary school, there are some similarities in name only, but if you dig a little deeper, you can see what Jordan Peterson's talking about and what actual F word is. It's not at all the same thing. There's aesthetics along with the sculptures. You see the cities, the architecture all start to represent this ideology of a very masculine, virile movement, right? Everything becomes angular and rigid. And the other thing about the F movement is, it's been said they added one thing to violence. Like all political extreme movements are violent. The one thing about the F movement is that they saw violence as purifying. Like, it made you a better person. It improved you by going to war, by killing, by fighting, by that this was healthy. okay, and purifying, hygienic. They got this from what was called the futurist movement or automobilism. Automobilism says we hate cowardice, we hate anything feminine, we love violence, it purifies us, it's hygienic. Could go on and on about the F word. I ended up doing my degree in neuroscience, but I started my graduate studies studying things like the F word and communism and socialism and various forms of totalitarianism, authoritarianism. So that's, and I spent years studying this and paranoia and politics and political psychology. And I'm still very much into it. But one thing you have to understand is at its core, the F movement is a revolutionary movement that doesn't like the status quo. It doesn't want to conserve. At first, it didn't want to conserve the monarchy. It didn't want to conserve. It doesn't want to conserve traditional liberalism. It sees itself as this new force on the political stage, a third way between traditional left and right dichotomies. And once you understand that, you can start to understand and maybe spot where there is a potential F movement. And I do think on parts of the far right, there is a very small but growing proto F word movement. It's there, it's not very strong, but you need to kill these monsters while they're small. If you follow this channel, if you follow me, you will hear me say that a lot. There are certain elements you start to see arise in society. You need to kill those monsters while they're small. The left didn't do it, and now we have wokeism everywhere. Wokeism is a Maoist sort of movement, a Jacobin sort of movement. There were warnings in the early aughts. It's been here for a while. It's not new. Using the word woke is relatively new, but the central ideas are not new. Even in the 90s, you could see this, but it was kind of on the college campus, only on the college campus, but you could see it creeping ever so slowly. And some of us, I put myself in this camp, have been warning about wokeism since the early aughts. If you study history, you shouldn't want to repeat it. When you see it start to repeat, you got to call it out. And that's why I'm calling out some on the far right now. You see this small but growing rise of ethno-nationalism, a lot of it in reaction to the far left, to the woke. But that's how these things work. They feed off of each other. These two evil ideologies feed off of each other. And people in the middle are usually some of the first to go. Like moderates, I don't know if you call me a moderate. I'm just a traditional liberal conservative kind of person, but I guess that's moderate in extreme times. Sanity is what they attack first and foremost, then beauty, and then truth, and then goodness. So anyways, that's generally speaking a very quick rundown of what the F word is. It's not actually conservative, even if conservatives end up switching their allegiance to an F word movement. And you could say it's right wing, but generally speaking, the F movement saw itself as a different sort of entity. Now, to be fair, it's very hard to define the F movement. I came up with this definition through a lot of reading. I relied heavily on Stanley G. Payne's book, A History of the F Word. It's very good. If you read the introduction to that, you will know more about the F word than 99.99% of people in the world. Okay, it's just a good overview of European F word. So